Any tactics that stick out to you guys that have really helped build the business to where it is today?
When you take a step back and look at our brand in our category, in our industry, I firmly believe the most important thing to get to the loyalty and retention we see on our business is to deliver what you say you're going to do. After all this discussion, that is, I believe, the true secret sauce of Maev, is that our customers are our biggest advocates. We see more customers coming in through referral than almost any other single channel.
Welcome back to another episode of Tomorrow Brand powered by Recharge. Today we have the team from Maev. We have CEO and co-founder Katie Spies, and we also have Michael Campi, who is the Senior Vice President, and they're going to talk about what it takes to bring down legacy brands with incredible product, incredible customer service, and building a brand that's been around for 6 years, but they're still going through each piece to take down some of the giants. So without further ado, first of all, thank you both for taking your time out to come here to New Jersey and to give our audience a little bit of the feel of building a brand that you guys are. But before we get into it, give a little bit about your background. Katie, we can start with you. There's a few people who may not know of you. Give them a little bit about what it took to get to even building Maev.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. Very excited to be here. I'm Katie Spies, co-founder and CEO of Maev. My background is not at all in pet food, and it actually wasn't in CPG either. I studied engineering and industrial design. I worked for a few startups, mostly on the tech side. I was a product manager of physical and digital tech.
Okay.
And in the midst of one of those roles at a growing company, 10 years ago, my dog George got sick, and when that happens, it's extremely stressful. I was trying everything. I went to the vet maybe like a dozen times and nothing worked. And one day a vet sort of said, why don't you change his food and see if that does anything? And it was a big light bulb moment of, okay, I don't just need a different medication or a different treatment. I went to the grocery store, bought a bunch of ingredients, made a very simple diet that they recommended. And within a few weeks, he started to be back to his old self. And then I was stuck making food, which is really inconvenient, time-consuming, expensive. And I would kind of like lightly complain about it to a lot of people, and they would tell me that they also are doing this very inconvenient, time-consuming, expensive thing. And I would say, I'll do it for you if you want to buy it from me. And so sort of accidentally started selling dog food on the side in 2015, 16, 17. Finally, years later, it clicked that there's something much bigger going on here. There's a much bigger unmet need, and got serious about it. But kind of fell into it. It took 5 or 6 years of making food before I realized there's a real business to be made here.
That's super cool. So a side hustle turned into a business. That's
exactly.
Awesome. And Michael, would love to get a little bit of your background of how you joined the brand and what you're kind of focusing on.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having us.
Of course.
Yeah, my story with Maev is a little shorter. I've been with Maev almost 2 years. I come from a background in CPG, no pet food experience though prior to Maev. And yeah, I came from the big food CPG brand management side. And over time, I really started to get more curious about early growth stage companies. And I made a career transition into that. Primarily for me, the proximity to the team and the business, the culture, being in this stage is so exciting and rewarding. And I love partnering with founders like Katie to help take the brand to the next level.
That is awesome. So, before we jump into some of the growth elements and what it takes to become a tomorrow brand, tell us a little bit more about Maev, right? Like what problem did you got to solve, obviously with pet food and being cleaner, but deeper rooted issues that you've come to solve now over the course of 6 years. And are you guys mainly a D2C business? Are you a mix of offline as well? So give us a little bit more color there, and then we can break it down further.
Yeah, I'll start and feel free to jump in. So the big problem that we set out to solve, pet food has a nutrition problem.
Yep.
Traditional dog food and cat food is deeply processed. It has low quality ingredients. It's lacking in transparency, traceability, and there was very little choice in the aisle, actually. It was like, do you want a triangular pebble to feed your dog or a square pebble to feed your dog? When my dog got sick and I realized that it was actually correlated with his nutrition, there was this light bulb moment of noticing nutrition is proactive for dogs' health. There are all of these studies that link poor nutrition to bad health outcomes and chronic illness in pets, and nutrition makes a difference. So we set out to fix that. We have high quality ingredients. It's ingredients that you can see and recognize, so we lean heavily into transparency. Everything's human grade, and it's raw. So a raw food diet is higher in protein, lower in fillers and carbs, which is overall just a better fit for your dog's biological nutrition needs. And so from the sort of nuts and bolts, we set out to fix the nutrition problem in the pet food aisle. Zooming out to where we are today, 6 years later, we are a heavily subscription-oriented business. We are primarily direct consumer online on our own .com e-commerce store. And we think about being where dog owners shop, but subscription and e-com is really working for us.
Makes sense. I think one of the pieces that really sticks out, right, is like the fact that you solved the problem for yourself and then, went on to build a business into it. I think the one part that I feel like even when I talk to some people about starting a new business or thinking about a new business or becoming, a brand-based business is like, oh, it already exists. Or like there's already like these, the Unilevers and the Procter & Gambles of the world kind of solving for that. And I'm curious, like when you initially looked at taking this on, especially in the world of where like freight and cost to ship, and you guys ship frozen, these are like deeper challenges that are, for me, like if I wanted to sell collagen, I make collagen, I'll sell it, and it's, I'm not saying it's super easy, but it's also way less barrier to entries. So I'm curious, walk me through that like process of like when you looked at some of the barriers, how'd you get through those? And was there any point where you're like, I don't want to do this? And what were kind of those thought processes?
Yeah, it's such an interesting question because in order to start a business, you have to be a little naive and a little obsessed. A lot of people will tell you it's a bad idea, tell you not to do it. You'll see all of the reasons why it shouldn't work or maybe already exists. You'll hear things like it takes 5 years of your life to commit to something before it's going to be mildly successful or better. For me, hindsight is 20/20. A lot of days I wish I started this 10 years ago when George first had health issues and I started making my own food. But it took 5 or 6 years of wanting to do this and not anything else on my to-do list or on my professional plate before I was really ready to dedicate time to it.
Makes sense.
There were some tells. I started making my own food and I would meet people and they would tell me how annoying it is that they're making food or haven't found something on the shelf that fit for their needs. And offering to make it for them clicked immediately. It spread really quickly. There was no brand name, there was no Instagram, and people I would meet, like a friend of a friend at work or a friend that used the same dog walker, would tell somebody else, and I would get a random text from a number not in my contacts saying,
that's so cool.
I heard you do this thing. Can you please do it for me? And I realized I wasn't the only person facing the issue, and people were jumping over small hurdles of texting a random person and asking them to make dog food. Eventually, I moved from San Francisco to Boston. I went to business school, and a lot of the people I was making dog food for would text me begging and saying, I will do anything. Can you please ship me some dog food from Boston? And I was thinking, like, this is crazy. Like, I'm going to have to go to the dry ice store and go to FedEx. I would tell them, like, I'm in line at FedEx, and they said it's going to be $250. And they would say, fine, do it. And so finding that there was enough of a craving, after I heard that message a ton of times, I wish I had listened to it earlier, then it was clear, okay, there is something here. And then you still sit back and think, okay, but it's cold chain, and some of the biggest global conglomerates are in this category spending tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars to crush people like me competing with them. Is this really going to work? And I think at some point, anybody who is willing to start a company just sort of like blocks all of that out and naively runs towards it anyway.
That's right.
So there's not a ton of logic in that step. You just got to go for it. But
love that.
There was some signal.
That's an incredible story. And so when you now you've gotten the signals and you get to work on building this, building the business, talk to me about like how you're looking at, you know, the fact that most of these businesses, the larger legacy brands, they have shelf space. They have, you know, they're in the aisle of where every shopper is looking. Did you feel like you had to find a way to compete against that? And how did you do that digitally?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great question. This is the ultimate challenge of any early stage company. You know, one thing, first off, what Katie just described, she created this thing. It did not exist. Customers who tried it loved it. She wasn't losing customers because they were switching dog foods a lot. She was telling them how your dog can live a better life if you make this switch. And so a lot of it for us was taking this brand story and why this brand even exists and synthesizing it all and making a very distinct and unique brand. And something Katie mentioned was that when you shop the pet food aisle, you actually don't remember the pet food brand you usually buy. You'll say like, oh, it starts with a Z. It has a picture of a lamb on it, but they all have a picture of a lamb on it. And we set out the way we can really win in this category is one, creating a category around raw food, but then also being a very unique and memorable brand that makes a connection with our customers. You'll see in the pet industry, a lot of brands rather talk about functional benefits. I want my dog to live longer. What we're trying to understand is, why does that matter? Like what about being a pet parent is so special?
Right.
And how can we leverage that as an insight to reach more customers and expand the brand? That we think fortifies us more against competition in the category.
No, that's smart. That makes a lot of sense. And I think that approach is like, it's probably something that you learn by only going through building. You can't like instill that mindset and then go build,
Right.
Because it's just so hard to get to there. Very cool. I'm also curious on like, when you look at the legacy brands and you look at just the amount of money they're willing to spend, right? Like you mentioned, to kind of keep the market share where it's at. What advantage did digital actually give you on the flip side of being like, hey, like we actually don't have to spend a ton of money maybe being on shelf and waiting for the planogram and all of that stuff. What were some of the things that you were able to do that maybe put them at a disadvantage, but you were able to kind of take the front on the digital end?
So much of what we think about internally when it relates to strategy is just distinctiveness.
Yeah.
And this isn't necessarily still true in every industry, but when we entered, digital was not a strength of those large companies. Digital was the easiest road to market.
That's right.
And it turns out that people like the convenience of shopping online and getting to compare from the comfort of their home and the ease of access that they can look things up whenever they want. But digital is still not a big strength of many of our huge competitors. They play largely in expensive retail shelf space with slotting fees and distributors and middlemen. And digital is not something that is a core competency of those businesses. So building it as a core competency for us is maybe another strategic advantage when we think about the broader business model. But you get to do a lot of things that I think a lot of direct consumer brands have been talking about since like 2016 when this really blew up. But you have a direct relationship with consumers. You hear feedback directly from them. We know a lot more about them because they reach out to us. They DM us, they email us, they call us, they text us. So you get a ton more feedback. Right. And because you're getting more feedback from day zero, you build that into the product. And you build it not just into the physical product or the packaging or the brand identity, but the digital experience that they're facing. You understand where they're facing pain points, what matters most to them. You can make those streamlined. And the R&D cycle around every single pixel of the business gets accelerated because you're directly in communication. And that is like invaluable. We would be, if it took 6 years to build this business to where we are today, if we were exclusively in shelf spaces where it took 6 months to get feedback, we would be so much less far along if we were physical only.
It's a great point.
Yeah.
Anything to add?
Yeah, I would add, in addition, just the level of customer relationship we're able to build. Yeah. The way we communicate with them, the value we can add with that direct conversation, that's really powerful for our brand. It makes us more memorable. Yeah. that's why our customers are so fiercely loyal, that we try to help them just be better pet parents. And that's really hard to do if you're, shopping in a different channel. I'd also add that the feedback you get from a retailer can also be the retailer's feedback. Right. And when you start a brand digitally, direct to consumer, you're getting feedback from the customer, like Katie mentioned.
Great point.
And I think for us to really be unique and different, we do need to swim against the tide.
Yep.
And that in the early days, we were creating this category, and that really did help us create this unique and distinct offer to customers.
Yeah. No, it's great. I love how much you guys are mentioning just customers, because it needs to be the forefront. And I've always heard one thing that's like always stuck with me, is like people will spend more money on pets and kids than they will spend on themselves. And that doesn't mean it's just easy to build a business in those categories. It means that they're going to be extremely selective.
Totally.
And so I'm curious, like, you guys talked a lot about the customer base and whatnot. How have you guys taken some of the customer feedback and iterated and improved to where you guys are today? Maybe if you guys have a few good examples of that, would be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to that comment you made, as have 2 kids and a 13-year-old dog.
Oh, wow.
Not much left for me there. But yeah, we hear themes from customers, and I think for us, hearing how can we as a team synthesize all these disparate insights we get, figure out what, we want to constantly make this product better for our customers. How can we then go after that? So one of the biggest things that customers will say about their dog is that their dog is a picky eater. Yeah. And the definition of picky eater is, it's very, it can be very broad. Right. Like, my dog won't eat the same food every day, or my dog won't eat this ingredient. And so we've taken a very hands-on approach to better understanding that. We talk to customers who say, one-on-one for 15 minutes, my dog is a picky eater. How can I transition them to Maev? We help them through that process. Wow. That's the one thing that probably holds most people back from switching their dog food is, will my dog like it? Yeah. Will it work with them? Yeah. And we take a very hands-on approach to make that happen.
Yeah. And I guess when you look at your core customer, which is the pet, right? They themselves only have 1 or 2 ways to signal or communication, right? It's like do or don't, right? And so it really comes down to, like, if you hit the nail on the head and you get the win, that win is pretty elongated. Which segues into, you mentioned you guys are a subscription business, right? And I believe you guys have been using Recharge for all 6 years in business, which is incredible. Would love to understand, especially in the world where we live in, where I feel like, and I'll talk more on from like the health and wellness space, where maybe you guys don't face it as much, but we face a loyalty issue sometimes, which is like, you can love our collagen, but if tomorrow a cheaper or better looking label collagen comes around, you're not too hesitant to switch, right? And so it's harder for us to build sometimes a subscriber base, because you feel like most customers you're acquiring, they are being acquired from switching to something else from you. And so that mindset of like, once a switcher, always a switcher, we see a lot of that. So I'm curious, like, on your guys' end, you guys have built an extensive subscriber base, a strong customer base that stays on and continues to buy product with you. What are some of the secrets of that? What have you guys been doing, whether it's using a tool like Recharge and some of the things they're offering, or even just on the product and iteration? And would love to get some understanding there.
Yeah, there's so many elements of the business that we've sort of chosen to, if we ever face a fork in the road, chosen the path that leads to deeper customer loyalty. So like from the very outset, we in the pet food business get the benefit of having a ubiquitous market. There are more dogs than there are children. And the statement you said around people investing more in their dogs and children than in their own goods is definitely true. People care deeply, and so everyone buys pet food. There are tons of different segments of customers. And the switcher segment definitely exists. The people who they haven't found the right product for their dog, and they'll keep trying things. And I would love to believe that after they try Maev, they are no longer switchers. They graduate to a deeply loyal segment. But things like choosing the customer and focusing on one customer profile instead of multiple helps us choose the customer who is looking for a pet food that solves a problem for them, and then we can double down and be really deeply rooted in her needs and build loyalty. So broad decisions like choosing the customer,
Makes sense.
decisions like go to market, being an online subscription brand makes loyalty way easier. Our category is really interesting because e-commerce is growing at this crazy pace in pet. That's not true across every category. But in 2018, e-commerce made up 18% of total pet goods sales.
Wow.
Today, we're in the upper 30s, and the forecast is having e-commerce grow even faster as a percent of sales. So people like to shop online. If they didn't, we would have to move somewhere else to meet them there. And if you look at stores like Chewy or Amazon, the pet goods are largely subscription-based. So there's a predictable consumption pattern, and again, there are these switchers, but once you find a food that meets your needs, there's this big hurdle, at least in pet food, because you would have to take 2 weeks to transition to a new food. And anytime you change your dog's diet, it's an investment of your time to do so. So meeting an educated consumer who's looking to be loyal to something that actually meets their needs and a channel where they shop, and presenting the options in front of them in a non-intimidating way, they naturally lean towards a subscription. And that helps a lot, because in a brick and mortar store, you go to the grocery store every week, or you go to the pet store 6 times a year, and you're choosing every single time, and you're looking at a shelf full of every one of your competitors.
Right.
And they get to choose based on whatever values they have.
Sure.
If you're on your own e-com storefront, none of your competitors have real estate there. We're not showing their ads on our PDP pages.
Right.
And if they opt for subscription, it's coming on the frequency that they want. We can make sure that we avoid the most important pitfalls, like you never want to run out of dog food. It's a huge headache if you do. So there are these broad decisions like customer base and channel and go-to-market strategy. And then there are these like very in-the-weeds decisions about like where on the PDP do we show the subscription option?
That's right.
What are the frequencies that we offer? How do we make sure to remove as many friction points as possible for them? And I mean, Recharge was part of the Maev story from day zero, but subscription has really helped our business grow. We don't have to spend a ton of marketing time reacquiring customers every time they need to re-up their subscription. So
yeah, I mean, that's a great example there. We talked a lot about how we build loyalty.
Right.
Then the challenge of then how do you get customers how do you acquire the customer to be a subscriber?
Right.
And I really can't say this enough, that when you create a product that is not substitutable in the category, and you know exactly who your target customer is, what they're looking for in food, and you know how to communicate that to them very efficiently, then we can start to get new customers into the door as well.
That's right.
And that's the challenge, though, is that we have to be highly unsubstitutable, unique and different, memorable, and then we have a system that helps them drive loyalty and retain them as subscribers as well.
That's awesome. No, it's a great point. And I think, especially when it comes to the business you guys are in, one of the things that I am jealous or envy of is like when somebody does find something for their pet or their dog or whoever it may be that they like, that switch piece does become a little bit less, even if you came in as a switcher. Whereas I think with us, given that you can literally go and create a collagen through any manufacturer, print a label, and go to market, there is like this natural race to the bottom. And then you're also facing the fact that like you're commoditizing so many of these like ingredient additions, right? Where like, oh, first we thought our collagen, because we added hyaluronic acid, separated us. But then a legacy brand like Vital Proteins, we realized on their next modular for Walmart, they included hyaluronic acid, and we're like, why are you guys like copying us? You know? But it's like it's hyaluronic acid is a $12 addition to a unit. They'll do it. You know? And then you're like, all right, well now I'm gonna fortify it with InnoBio, which is like this patented ingredient, and you find out Ancient Nutrition now is adding InnoBio, and you're like, damn, like you really can't separate. You also can't go in now the other route and say, hey, I'm going to make a custom formula where you're not going to know what's in it by, creating a proprietary formula or blend, because then the negative connotation is like, well, I want to know what's in my product.
Right.
Right. So the customer kind of guides you how you have to build your product.
Yeah.
Then when you build it, you have legacy brands that kind of build on top of you. So it's like, again, I do agree with you on the fact that, like, even for us, so much of our business has to focus online and trying to build this like loyalty and consistency of retention. Because when we try and go the other route too, it kind of smacks you, or like, okay, well, now I just got to get better and better and better. Whereas here, I have to keep iterating, but I'm iterating based on what my customers want, not based on what profile the legacy brands are adding to compete with me, which is interesting. One of the things, as we're talking on this theme of like overcoming like industry norms and what we're all doing to like better our businesses, what are some of the like biggest misconceptions you've dealt with? And if you can name a few and maybe how you overcame them, whether it was from a product to customer standpoint, or even like what you guys initially stood for, or what things changed. But if you have a few, that'd be awesome to explore.
Yeah.
I love the blueberry story.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. So my background is in tech and engineering and product. So when I used to think about innovation in pet food wasn't like the thing that jumped to the front of my mind. But when I started officially thinking about Maev, one of the big innovations was it's real ingredients you can see. They're not ultra processed, they're not adulterated in some way. It's ingredients in a bag shipped to your door. And it's human grade. So most pet food companies buy feed grade, which is a completely different set of vendors. Very few food safety quality regulations apply. It's a completely different world to procure from than
And that's just the quality of where you're sourcing your
exactly. And it's quality, it's which actual vendors and farms you're shopping from.
Got it.
As a procurement person at a company. So in the early days, we need to build product, and we would call up vendors to say we need to buy pallets worth or boxes worth or truckloads worth of ingredients. And once they would hear who we are, we're calling like a human grade blueberry vendor, for example, or a beef company that typically ships to restaurants, hotels, or small companies. They would hear that we're a pet food and say like, well, you called the wrong number. The pet line is actually, the pet department's a different salesperson.
Oh, wow.
And we would have to constantly educate on, no, we are buying human grade. I want to put your high quality blueberries in a pet food for a reason, and constantly sort of fight this misconception about what the norm of the industry was. And I wouldn't have thought that would be so hard, but every little element of building a business from scratch where you are innovating, you run into whatever the norm is. And if you're breaking it, you need to do a lot of education. You got to tell the story again and again. We're not just selling the story to our customers. We have to sell the story to our blueberry farmer and to our beef vendor and to the new hire. You've got to sell it to every partner along the entire journey. So breaking the norm around ingredient quality and types of ingredients we use, we had to get very good at telling that story and convincing everyone.
That's really interesting.
It's like less misconceptions, more like breaking norms of the industry. And we continue to see those norms. We see norms in ways where things are not transparent. What ingredients are in this food? Why, like the ingredient line having the word meal after every protein type. Do consumers really know what that means, and how you go from beef to beef meal, and what is that? The amount of carbohydrates in dog food, like all these things that people care about in their own food that somehow the pet industry has been able to sidestep for so long. And transparency goes all the way to the marketing mix, pricing. Like it's really hard to understand how much is it actually going to cost to feed my dog this product. I have to fill out this survey, and then it's like the first order is like, you give me money for the first order, and it's all very confusing to consumers. And we seek to break that norm. We seek to be very transparent. And that's a real key part about disrupting an industry, is saying, here are all the norms of the industry. What's Maev going to do? And that's a really great exercise for any team to do.
When you're trying to go up against what everyone is used to seeing, I think it's interesting you bring up, like, even where you source your product isn't used to it, right? It's not just like trying to go to your customers and tell them to, hey, buy this more expensive grade product, but you're also dealing with it on the supply chain end, which is fascinating. But I think that's probably where some of these things you're truly leading a shift, right? In that, so that's really cool. I want to shift gears into, you've been talking about building this loyal customer base, and the evolution over the years of building that base. What's kind of been some of the more tactical things you guys have done to build that loyalty? I'm sure you guys have a good share of social media, paid marketing, et cetera, but are there anything that's kind of any tactics that stick out to you guys that have really helped build the business to where it is today, whether it's on the loyalty or retention end?
Yeah, I have a pretty boring answer to this, to be honest. Of course, we do a lot of the things that you can do in the digital world to drive loyalty, membership programs, referral, etc. But I think when you take a step back and look at our brand in our category, in our industry, the challenges, the norms, I firmly believe the most important thing to get to the loyalty and retention we see on our business is to deliver what you say you're going to do. And we set clear expectations with customers that we're in this with you, you're making this switch, we're excited for you.
Yeah.
And this is what you're going to see in the first month. This is what you're going to see in the second month. This is what you're going to see in the third month. And if you can help set those expectations and help them through that transition, they become fiercely loyal. But the most important thing is that they become brand advocates. And that, after all this discussion, that is, I believe, the true secret sauce of Maev, is that our customers are our biggest advocates. We see more customers coming in through referral than almost any other single channel. And I think that's really a testament to the product delivery, the transparency with the consumer, and that's what's getting to, in my opinion, getting to the type of loyalty we see on our business.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
I have a more internal facing answer that maybe credits Michael a little bit too. So from day one, we think about, okay, who's our customer? What's our business model? What proof points can we reach to motivate keeping doing this, whether it's raising money or hiring more people?
Sure.
And at some point, after we hit a critical mass of people, there were clearly some people in the organization who deeply understood the customer and the need and the innovation behind the product. And then we had other people in the company who are like extremely loyal, talented, powerhouses. But would they be able to describe the brand? No. And so if you ever needed to say, is this on brand or off brand? Is this the right product innovation or the right channel to do? You'd have to ask that small pocket who deeply got it. And that probably happened once we hit 10 or 15 people, like very early. It's not like you need hundreds of people to bifurcate who gets it and who doesn't quite get it or hasn't been brought along. So we built a brand book, which forced those people who got it to get in a room and very clearly define on paper who we are, what we care about, what our values are, what is on brand, what is off brand, and who our customer is, why there's mutual fit there, and then pass it out to everyone as part of onboarding. And now the group of people who get it are everyone who's in the tent, which is the entire company. And obviously that speeds up processes because you don't just need to get on the calendars of that small group, but everyone can make better decisions that do exactly what we're sort of like hyping about, being distinct, fitting with the customer, being strategic, not doing everything. So building a brand book was, I think, like a pivotal exercise for us internally to move faster and stay fit with the customer.
It's a great point. It's a great call out. And I feel like some of these points, they kind of get lost in building brands today, especially if you're building like a tomorrow brand. Like I think some of these things are like, oh, you don't need one of those anymore. Like, I know my colors and I know my slogan, I know my style guide, and that's it. And it's like, you actually do need it, because I think we struggle with it sometimes because we don't have one. But like, you realize you're not going to stay with the same vendors forever.
Right.
You're not going to use the same email partner, the same ad agency, the same loyalty partners, whatever it may be. And when you realize you need it the most is when you're trying to teach new people who are extremely smart and talented, but if they can't pick up on all of the little nuances that you would almost hope that they would assume and know, that's where you kind of lose the brand, right? And those are the elements. So it's such a great call out.
Yeah.
Yeah, completely.
We sat in a room in hours debating brand values, mission, purpose, differentiators. And I think that's the way you scale that.
Yeah.
You scale it when we have 100 people in our company, we can fast forward them with the story of how we got here, why we're here. And it is a very powerful tool. You should do one.
Yeah, no, it's I'm going to talk about it today when I go and meet my partners. I'm also curious when you look at which direction Maev's going to continue to go now, right? So you look at what tomorrow looks like and what the next, the next 6 years look like. Is there a lot that is going to change in terms of like approach and product? And you don't have to give away secrets, but I'm just curious, I feel like sometimes when I talk to brands and they talk about their next 5 years, it feels like it's a whole new ball game for them. And then I talk to some other brands, they're like, we're just gonna keep doing what we're doing, but we're just gonna do it on a wider scale. So I'm curious, how do you guys look at the vision, and how have you gone about determining that vision?
I would love to say both.
Yeah, okay.
But I think, so I had an advisor once who talked about the rudder of the company and the thing that makes it stable, because we were talking about this before we started recording, but every day is different.
Yep.
There's chaos all around us. There's an element of Murphy's Law that feels like it's like exacerbated in a small company somehow. And it's like,
Fair. That's a good
it's
point.
not just some things go wrong, but everything somehow has more hurdles and is more uphill. And so this concept of like, what is the rudder of the company that keeps some element of stability? Vendors could change, technology could change, customer demands might shift slightly, and you're going to have to pivot constantly on so many elements of the business model and the decisions that you make. So I would love to say both and like not answer the question, but
No, that's great. At least you explained it, both sides of it.
In a perfect world, we just keep doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
But I think the forces around us will constantly challenge things. And like you said, competitors will try to copy you and steal your innovation and try to steal what deeply roots you with your customers.
Sure.
Or like the market may shift, and maybe that e-commerce trend I was talking about pivots and people go back to a store and they like shopping there.
Yeah.
We'll have to iterate. But I think we'll have to stay true to some element, and for us it's this tie to the consumer, and whatever creates that loyalty, we need to stick with it.
Yeah.
So if she changes her mind, we follow her. A non-answer answer.
No, that's great. No, I think the goal of it is like having some level of understanding in whatever you're gonna do. You take elements of what's working, and then obviously grow on top of it. I think I always just find it like I was actually talking to a company that does home gym equipment.
Yeah.
And their next 5 years was going fully to software, right? Versus they have an incredible home equipment that they've built. And I was like, hey, that's a great vision. And again, I have no idea if it's going to work or not. I'm sure they're creative, but it's like, it is so vastly different in vision. Then it's like, wait, the core of it, the rudder seems like it's this. And again, people build business in different ways. So always curious on how you guys look at that.
Yeah.
I'd love to touch on if you guys have some core examples of additional tactics or maybe something cool that you guys did for the brand or a cool campaign, just some stuff that makes Maev who they are. Maybe it's more internal, certain things you guys are doing operationally. What makes you guys kind of be a little bit different besides obviously exceptional product, exceptional customer service, community, et cetera? What are some of the other key factors that we haven't talked about?
Yeah, we haven't talked too much about how this all then shows up to customers. It's a good, good segue. I'm really proud of my team because we we've talked through this a little bit today, but we started with like understanding the pet market. Who is our target customer? If we could create a persona of her, who is she? What's her dog's name? What does she do with her dog? How does that then connect with what Maev believes? We understand where the shared beliefs and promises exist. And then we can get into activating, which is what usually people see when you experience a brand. And you can't just say, our brand stands for this, so that's what you say to customers. You have to, like I think about it as all these feathers just falling on a scale, and eventually you understand the brand. It's like meeting a new person. You know, a lot of experiences get to how you believe who they are and how they represent themselves and what they believe in. I think with the brand, it's similar. You have to start to be consistent, know how you're different, know what you stand for. And we launched a campaign over the summer where I mentioned earlier, a lot of pet food brands tend to talk about how, you know, they want their dog to live a long, happy life. And that's great. We firmly believe in that as well. But ultimately, that means something to the customer. It's not just the fact that their dog lives longer. It's that enables them to do something with their dog more. Maybe when you have a bad day, your dog is always there for you. They're always happy to greet you at the door, and you need that. That's the motion that we're trying to tap into. And so when we created this campaign around people's deep connection with their dog and how their dogs are more a part of their life and what they do day to day. So we highlighted some local influencers in Austin, or I should say influential people. They're not the traditional influencer, restaurateurs.
Yep.
James Beard nominee restaurant, a chef who recommends Maev. That's very interesting. Sommeliers, ranchers, and told the story of what feeding their dog raw and living this life that we believe people should be able to live with their dog, bringing that to life to our customers. And at the end of the day, that helped us express what we mean when we say, you know, pet food has a nutrition problem, or our food is just whole food ingredients. You can see we can express that in various ways through these campaigns and make very deep connections that are not just about the attributes of the product.
Campaigns like that, I think it's like makes people actually think about what they're saying. Mm-hmm. And I remember one where it was I've been part of one of my longest subscriptions is Dollar Shave Club. Mm-hmm. I think I've had it for like 10 years now. Every week, just send me blades. I remember one of the things they said, I think one of their campaigns was around like, you don't clean shave because you love clean shaving, clean shave because you want to present yourself a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And it's like, it makes you think about like, yeah, I don't just shave because I want to have that feeling. It's like, oh, it's because I want to present myself as this person. And I think like that's awesome that you guys did that, because I think that's what makes you think about even just the relationship with your pet or the relationship with your kid or whatever it may be, or the relationship with yourself. So that's super powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, the reason
Yes,
why
the
they
reason.
care about.
They're not telling you about the sharpness of the razor blade.
Yeah.
It's just you'll always have fresh blades, so you can always look and look your best. But that's about then feeling
Nailed it.
your best.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Any other examples from Aaron and Katie?
I love that you are talking about the emotional and I keep going back to the tactical. This is our day-to-day
You got
dynamic.
a great balance. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, my advice to any marketer is find a founder like Katie who you have a good balance with. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
One of the tactical things that we did to completely switch gears that I think it has been helpful in helping us grow is, I call it the operating system of the company. The process of how we plan, where we dedicate time. So internally, people make fun of me because I would always say focus, do less, make the list of to-dos shorter. We should make the list every day, week, quarter, or year as short as is possible to be excellent at those things and not follow all these shiny objects. And so I call it the operating system, but the cadence of meeting with all of the departments quarterly to decide what makes the list. And you have to say no to so much, which is not fun, but you end up with a shorter list versus everyone feeling like they're trying to boil the ocean.
Yeah.
And so we do that on an annual basis, a quarterly basis. We review the list every Monday as a whole team. And sometimes it gets stale and you have to reinvent it a little bit, but figuring out what operating system fit for the company at different stages. And you break it, I think, every 6 months.
Yeah.
But keeps everyone focused, makes very clear what we are doing and what we're not doing. I think that was a tactical unlock to help us keep powering growth.
Well, while we're in the spirit of giving advice, one thing we like to do at the end of each Tomorrow Brand episode is you guys shared incredible amount of tactics and how you guys have gone about building Maev the last 6 years. But if there's one key takeaway each of you can share for a brand builder that's trying to become a tomorrow brand, trying to build a brand that's going to last forever and grow, what's your one key takeaway, Katie, for a listener that you'd want them to go and apply to their business?
Yeah. I have been thinking about this a lot, and I realize how backwards what I'm about to say is going to sound. But my advice is to be very skeptical of advice. Now, I listen to a lot of podcasts of other people talking about building their businesses. We have a board of amazing investors and advisors. We have people in the entire sphere, both inside and outside of the company, who give us advice. Yeah. And if you start a company or if you're building a company, you will get tons of advice. And I think being extremely skeptical of advice and maybe even like anti-advice is my advice. Yeah. I realize the hypocrisy here of like sitting behind a mic saying that, but there's a type of advice that we get that is extremely intelligent and well-intended, but I would label it as lemming advice. It's the headlines are saying that everyone is doing this, you should go do this. Yeah. Or I'm talking to a lot of people and they're all launching this channel, or they're all considering this addition to their product, you should do that. And I think taking any element of advice that you get and running it through the filter of, is this our exact strategy, is important, because you know your business. Everyone says this. You know your business better than anyone else, but actually trusting yourself to run it through that filter and being skeptical of headlines, of trends, of advice from people who are not inside the tent with you is my advice from being outside the tent with you.
That's incredible advice. Well, thank you. Michael, what about you?
That's really good. I shouldn't give you advice. Okay, so a while back I was watching this cooking show, and it was like, how much butter should I add when it says add some butter? Yeah. It's like add as much as you think, then double that, and then a little bit more. Right. And I think that when you think about how to make your brand very unique and different, I think you do have to follow that approach. You really do have to firmly stand for something, and knowing what that is extremely important. And the whole team should be rallied behind it and excited by it. That should motivate your team. When you say we're doing things differently than any other pet food brand, someone who's coming into the company should say, that's really exciting. I cannot wait to do that. So what that means is we're not looking for the blueprint or this is what other pet brands do. That's like our kryptonite. We get inspiration from running companies, luxury companies. We're not drawing inspiration from pet food companies. So for us, like a really important exercise that we did was list out everything, all the norms of the industry, and say, how can we break those? If that's this, what could we do? And that's not saying we're going to do those, but it gives you a spectrum of knowing what's the add butter, then a little bit more. And then say like, okay, so what are we and what are we not? And go through that, and you will start to move towards being more distinct and unique and celebrate a lot of the things that you talk a lot about on your show. Acquisition, loyalty, building successful brands online. You'll start to inch towards that. And I think that exercise really helps get the team to understand where we are today and where do we want to go in the future.
It's incredible advice. That was incredible advice from both of you. And Katie, Michael, thank you so much for joining us, telling us a little bit about how you guys built Maev, and showing our viewers what it takes to build a tomorrow brand. So thank you so much for joining us, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.